Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be my updated foundation routine. I would say this is it's like medium to almost full coverage for me. It is something that I've been doing for the last couple of weeks, and I really like how it lasts throughout the day and how it still looks at the end of like 8 to 10 hours. It still looks really good, and I haven't had to powder at all. So I am still having to cover up this cluster of madness, I guess. It is getting better. I've been trying a bunch of different things to get it to go away. And I am getting my roots done on Friday. Can you believe it's only been 6 weeks and this is how much regrowth I have? The struggles of being a blonde, I swear. Oh, and what else is new? I'm still trying to grow out these bangs. Bangs. My bad. So if you guys would like to see my updated foundation routine, please keep watching. So starting off my foundation routine, I'm taking the Caudalie, I hope I'm saying this right, and it's the grape water spray. I really like this stuff because my skin feels instantly hydrated. And then I also did my brows before I did anything else, and oh my gosh, I'm never doing that again. Never, 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 never. Anyways, then going in with NYX Angel Veil Primer. I actually really like this stuff. And I take about 2 pea sizes worth of product, and I always start in the center of my face because I want the majority of the product in my problem areas, which my problem areas are the center of my face, which is like my T-zone, which I think is probably most people's problem areas, maybe. And then I always work the rest of the product out towards the outer perimeters of my face. Now I'm going in with Dr. Brandt Pores No More Primer, and I always take about half a pump, as you can see here, and I put this right in my T-zone, like where my pores are bigger or where I tend to get oily throughout the day. Like, I'm really dry skin, but I do get a little bit oily, and I notice whenever I use this primer in those areas, I don't have to powder at all throughout the day, and I really think it's because of this primer. So as you can see here, I work it on my cheeks, my nose, right above my cupid's bow, my chin, and right in the middle of my eyebrows. Moving on to foundation, I first like to take this Kojin Do Aqua Foundation Illuminator in white, and I'm mixing it in with this Rimmel Lasting Finish Foundation in 101 Classic Ivory. And this is a more matte foundation in my opinion, so I always like to mix in a liquid illuminator. And I take about this much foundation on the back of my hand, and then I also use an entire pump of the illuminator mixed in with it. So then I like to mix it all in on the back of my hand with my finger, as you see here, and then I will dot it all over my face. So after I'm done dotting it all over my face, I'll go in with my Real Techniques Diamond Sponge. And I always like to put one layer of foundation on my entire face first, and then I'll go back in and I'll layer a second layer of foundation on my problem areas, which for me is like a little bit on my cheeks because I do have a little bit of redness, and then that little like cluster of pimples that's on my chin that obviously is never going to go away at this point. But that's how I like to wear my foundation. And did I say that this was full coverage foundation? I can't remember if I said that or not, but this is listed as a full coverage foundation, and I really like it, and I haven't heard anybody talk about it, so I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but I do prefer the diamond sponge over my beauty blender because I feel like my beauty blender steals a lot of my product. I don't know, again, it could just be me, but this diamond sponge, I'm telling you, if you don't have it, oh my gosh, you need to get it. Now I'm taking the remaining of the foundation and I'm using a Tarte Kabuki foundation brush, and I'm going to be blending the foundation on my neck. I will always prefer a brush over a beauty blender because I feel like a brush I get everything blended in well, and when I use a damp sponge to put foundation on my neck, I feel like it's splotchy, so that's why I use a brush for that. Then I'm going in with this BH Cosmetics Corrector and Conceal palette, and I'm taking the salmon shade in there, and I'm using a Morphe G24 brush, which is one of my favorite brushes to use an under eye corrector with. And I always want the majority of the product in the corners of my eye, and then I blend it out towards the outer portion of my eye. I hope that makes sense, because that's where I'm the most dark, where I get the most darkness is right there. Then I'm going to go in with my Real Technique sponge, and I'm just going to lightly go over where I put that corrector just to pick up any additional product. Moving on to concealer, my favorite for the moment is this Lancome waterproof concealer in the shade Ivory, and I always take about 2 or 3 drops of it, and then I kind of mix it on the back of my hand like that, and then I like to apply it, sorry, there's a fuzzy, then I like to apply it underneath my eye and kind of blend it out a little bit with my ring finger, and I always do one eye at a time because it does dry a little bit fast. And then I'm taking my favorite concealer brush, or the brush that I use for concealer, and it's the Morphe E45. And if you've been around my channel for a little bit, you know this is like the brush I always use to blend out my concealer. I notice when I try to use a damp sponge, I don't know if it's just because it's winter and my skin's drier than, you know, if it was the summertime, but if I try to use a damp sponge for concealer now, it pulls off my product. So I've been really liking this brush to blend out my concealer, and as you can see, I put it on my under eye and then also on my eyelid. Then I'm just going to be doing the exact same thing on the other eye in an upside down triangle, and I really like concealer on my eyelid as well. Like, I prefer concealer for an eyeshadow primer over an eyeshadow primer. Now, to conceal and highlight the rest of the center of my face, I always like to take just a little bit of concealer up the bridge of my nose and then right in between my eyebrows. I don't bring my concealer up too much in the center of my forehead because I want my forehead to look smaller and not like, I don't want to bring that much attention to it. So then I always do like a little circular motion of concealer, as you can see there, on my chin. And then I go back in with my Real Technique sponge and I'm lightly tapping all the concealer because, like I said, if I push too hard, it will steal my product away. So this is just what works best for me. And then if I need more concealer, I'll go back in with the brush and apply more concealer. So right here, I'm just spot concealing that little cluster of pimples. Moving on to bronzer, I'm taking the Benefit Hoola Liquid Bronzer, and I always do one pump on the back of my hand, and then I like to mix it or blend it out on the entire back of my hand, as you see here, because then I feel like I can control the amount of product that goes on my face so I don't go overboard. And I'm using the Real Technique sculpting brush, and this is like my favorite brush for cream contour, cream bronzer, like that kind of thing. And as you can see here, I always start by my ear, and then I start blending less product out towards the center of my face because I want the most bronzer and darkness, I guess you would say, on the outer perimeter of my face. So I'm lucky enough to have like pretty predominant cheekbones, but if you needed help, you could just always make that little fishy face and then you'd be able to see like where your cheekbones are. So right here, I'm blending it all the way up my cheekbones, and now I'm going to start blending it all the way around my forehead. And I do like a little bit more bronzer on my forehead just because I want my forehead to appear smaller. So I just start kind of like stamping it all over my forehead because I feel like stamping with this brush is blending the product better than swiping it, because if you swipe it, you're just going to pull off your foundation. And now I'm moving on to my jawline, so I'm still continuing to do the same thing, taking the product off the back of my hand and just stamping it in all the areas that I want to be bronzed. And I do my entire jawline, and then I bring it down below my ears as well. And then I wanted a little bit more bronzer on my forehead, so I just went back in with some more. Now with no additional product, I'm literally just taking whatever is left over on the brush. I just go over my entire mouth with it because I feel like when I do this, it makes my lips appear bigger. Then to blend it out so we have no harsh lines, I just went back in with my Real Techniques Diamond Sponge and I'm just lightly pressing over all those areas. Now for cream contour, I'm taking the Anastasia contour stick in the shade Fawn. This is the most perfect contour shade I've ever found. And I'm just contouring my nose and my lips and my cheeks and my forehead, all the places that I like to contour. And since I want this video to be more focused on my foundation routine, I'm not going to really go into too much detail on how I contour and highlight because I think that's like a whole video in its own, but I did want to include this just, you know, just so you could see like my entire like face routine. Now I'm using this My Makeup Brush Set brush. There's no name on it, I'm not sure, but I really like it to blend out my nose contour. So that's what I'm doing here. And then I also like it to blend out the contour underneath my lip and my Cupid's bow. Now I'm using the Real Techniques sculpting brush and I'm just blending out all of that cream contour. So in case I feel like I went a little too heavy with the contour shade, I like to go back in with my concealer brush and just kind of blend around the areas that I feel like are too dark. Now I'm just blending out the creases on my eyelids with the concealer brush, and I don't really crease that much underneath my eye, but I always go through and just pat underneath there just in case. And then like you can see here, I'm doing that on both eyes. To set my eyelids and my under eye, I'm using this e.l.f. under eye powder, and I always put it in the cap first and then I swirl it around with the Morphe M504 brush and I just kind of tap it underneath my under eye and then on my eyelids. Even though my under eye doesn't really crease, just my eyelids usually do, but I just do it, just, you know, better safe than sorry. And I do think it's very comparable to the Laura Mercier Secret Under Eye Brightening Powder. So if you're wanting to try that, grab this e.l.f. one first because I have both and I think they just work the exact same. Now to set the rest of my face, I'm taking the Lancome Translucent Loose Powder in 001. It's the lightest shade that you can get. And I always pour about this much into the lid. I just wanted to show you guys like how much I actually use. And I'm taking my Morphe MB1 powder brush and I swirl it around and then I just dab it on one side of my face because when I use the loose powder to set my foundation, I work in sections around my face. So now I'm just going to put some more loose powder in the cap and then do the other side of my face and then put more loose powder in the cap and do my forehead and then put more loose powder in the cap and do my neck. This is just what works best for me and I just really like how my foundation looks when I use this loose powder because I feel like it doesn't leave me cakey, but it does the job. Does that make sense? It's like it sets my foundation and it keeps it in place without looking like I'm wearing a lot of makeup. So I just wanted to quickly mention that if I'm going to use a liquid bronzer or a cream bronzer or cream contour like I did, I don't set it with a powder bronzer or powder contour. I just use it and then I set it with a loose powder. I know some people like to set a cream bronzer with an actual bronzer, but I don't do that. And I don't know, I think it just looks, I think it looks just as good. I guess to each his own, but that's just what I do. So I decided I wanted to brighten up my under eye a little bit, so I took MAC Pro Emphasize powder and I'm using a Morphe E48 brush, and this is usually like my go-to setting concealer brush, but you know, when I was using the e.l.f. under eye powder. I didn't know at this point, or at that point, that I wanted a brighter under eye, or I would have just skipped that step. So for blush, I'm taking Makeup Geek Bliss, and it's kind of like a peachy with a little bit of pink blush, and I'm using a Morphe E4 brush to apply it, and I like to kind of stamp it on. As you can see here, I don't swipe because I feel like I get more product payoff, like more color payoff, if I do it this way. So I want the majority of the color on the apples, and then I blend backwards. Now, I know I'm using a lot of Morphe brushes, but that's because I'm signed up for monthly Morphe, so I've accumulated all these brushes over time, just in case you were wondering why I'm only using Morphe brushes. So now I decided I wanted a little bit more, and I like a lot of blush. So if you don't like a lot of blush, don't feel like you have to apply a lot, but I do. Now I'm going back in with the Morphe E48 brush just to kind of like brighten back up my under eye. I didn't have any additional product. I'm just using what was left over on the brush. Now to clean up my bronzer and contour, I took the Kat Von D Shade and Light palette, and I'm taking the lightest shade and then kind of like the more yellow shade there in the middle. I'm mixing the two of them, and I'm still using the Morphe E48 brush, and I literally start by my ear right here and I swipe downwards and then I blend down. I hope this is making sense, but that's what I do when I just want to clean my contour up a little bit, and then I go and I'll blend a little bit on my cheeks as well, just to make sure that everything's blended together and I don't have any harsh lines. Now for highlighter, I'm using this Laura Mercier highlighting palette, and I believe I'm taking the color Devotion. It's the lightest color. It's kind of like a pinky pearl color, and I'm using my Morphe M501 brush to highlight. And when I highlight, again, that should be like a whole nother video on highlight and contouring, but I like the majority of the product in the center. So I'll blend it in the center, and then I'll start blending backwards and forward, so that way most of my highlight is in the center of my cheek on the highest point. And then, you know, just to blend it out and balance it, that's when I start moving the brush backwards and forwards, as you see here. I really hope I'm doing a good job describing my steps to you. I hope it's making sense. Then I just dust a little bit on my chin and my Cupid's bow, and then I'm gonna go in and use that same highlighter on my brow bone and my nose and my inner tear duct. I always like to use the highlighter that I use on my face and all those other areas, so everything just kind of like goes together. Also, the brush I'm using is from the Too Faced Teddy Bear collection, and it's just the all over shadow brush. So for a more intense highlight, I took Becca Pearl, and I'm using a Sigma Inner Corner E46 brush. This is my favorite brush to use to highlight my nose. And then after I'm done highlighting, I always like to go back in with my blush brush. No additional product. I just want to make sure everything's blended together and I didn't lose like any of the blush. Then I like to go in with a stippling brush and just blend everything on my cheeks together. Now to set my entire face, I'm using the Urban Decay All Nighter Spray, and I'm just taking a bath in it. And I try to sit really still while it dries, so that way I don't get any creasing. So this concludes my updated foundation routine. I can typically wear this for about 8 to 10 hours and not have to put on any powder. So I hope you guys found this video helpful. If you did, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you guys in my next videos. Bye.